Make the Gumball block. Now the Gumball block is a really simplistic, fast quilt block to make. Nevertheless, you get a really beautiful quilt with it. So I will show you the whole quilt at some point with a whole tutorial to make the block. I know I've got the ring toss quilt lagging behind, but it's coming, it's coming. All right, so we're going to move on with this one today. I hope everybody is doing well and had a beautiful Easter. Okay, so I have 4 strips here together, and I have some jelly roll strips, as I said. Okay, now you can use scraps, you can use yardage, whatever you please. But what I really want you to bear in mind, especially if you're going to cut from yardage, is that you really look at the prints and the tone of the strips you're using. So I'm referring here to lights and darks. So as you can see, I have dark here, I have light, and I have dark, okay? Right, so what I want you to pay attention to is that I don't want, for example, I don't want to have my 2 larger scale prints together. So I don't want my stars here and my flowers here, because those are the largest prints, aren't they? Because if I were to move this one out the way, you can see my smaller prints here. Okay, so if I were to bring this down here, now I have my 2 darks together and my 2 lights together. The importance here is that we want the block to be balanced. So if we get it right at this stage, then we get the whole layout of the quilt top correct, because then it will be balanced. Okay, so for example, if I were to sew these 2 darks together, these will be very prominent, and these will may slightly disappear into the background because they're lighter, and these will more or less form a different pattern, and we don't want that. We want to mix them around. Okay, so what I am going to do is to move it around until it makes sense. So we're working with lights and darks and the print size. So for example, I'm going to move this one and swap it down there. Okay, so now I have lights, dark, dark, lights. So what I'm going to do is put that one there. Okay, so I have light, dark, dark. But again, it doesn't make sense because I've got my 2 prints there. So one has got to move. So I'm going to move this light here and put that there. And again, I still got it in the middle. It's confusing, isn't it? So what I'm going to do in this instance, I'm going to put my 2 darks there. And I'm going to put my light in the middle there. All right, so then I have my dark, light, dark, light. It's very important that you get this stage correct. Okay, so in this instance here, I have a large scale, I've got a sort of a medium scale here, and I've got a smaller scale and back to a large scale. Yes, these 2 are very similar in scale, but sometimes you may have to work with what you have. So for this instance here, having these 2 scales together is okay, because I have a light and a dark. I hope that makes sense, guys, okay? So what I'm going to do is sew these 2 together, and then I'm going to sew these 2 together. Note that I have the dark on the end and I've got the light on the end there. Very important, so make note of these things. All right, so let's sew these 2 together, and then I'll come back and show you the next step. All right, so once we have our fabric sewn together, so I've made a tube, so I have sewn the 2 strips together and then add them on top of each other. Okay, now you need your ruler and you need to find your 45-degree line and line it up at the top of your strips. So you're going to turn it. Once you find your 45-degree line on your ruler, you need to angle it properly just to make sure it actually is correct. So I'm just going to find mine. There it is. So I'm going to line it up to the tip up there, the corner. So this is the center of my ruler there. So my 45-degree line is there. So I'm just taking it and putting it right. That area goes right to the top there where my 1/4-inch seam is. And I'm just angling it, make sure it's level and straight. So I've got my 45-degree line. So what you should see is your 45-degree line up here, and your 45-degree line on top there as well. So the top and the corner, it should line up. Let me just come down a little bit more so that it's more closer. So I'll find that back again. So 45°, both areas. So 45 there, and I can see my 45 there line up, okay? What you do not want to do is to bring it all the way off, because then you'll be cutting incorrectly. We need to move it down a little bit, so just to make sure that we're not cutting on the end there. We don't want that, it's going to be waste anyway. Okay, so I'm just going to line up yet again, right in the middle, 45°, and I'm going to cut. Okay, once I've done that, that is no waste. I always tend not to press down enough. That's my bad habit. Right, so once you have that first 45° line, what I'm going to do is get a 90° now, and I'm just going to line up the top up there, and I'm simply going to cut. So I'm lining it up at the top there, and I'm going to cut. And what you need to do once you continue to do this, so I think I made sure and press down on that one. Nope, I didn't press down much enough because my wrist hurts, so I'm a little bit, okay, let's get that. My pressure point is a little bit soft. I don't want to hurt my hand. All right, so, and again, what we're going to do now is find the 45° again and continue to make our cuts. Lost it now. Now, what I failed to mention is that you need to make sure that you do an accurate 1/4" seam. Very, very important that you do that. So I found my 45° line up there, and I'm just continuing to cut. Just making sure everything lines up properly. I mean, at this stage, there's no point in rushing, so just take your time. If you're unsure, what you can do is take your original cut, turn it upside down, and just measure it there. And you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing it correctly. All right, so that's what you need to do if you think you haven't got the cut correctly. Okay, now what I was about to say before the strip fell is that you need to ensure that you still have your right amount of cuts as you move along, because sometimes you can shift the cuts a little bit. Okay, and what I mean by that is that you're lining up for your 45° might be slightly off. So it's important that when you continue in your cuts all the way down, that you ensure that you stop and check just to make sure you have your 45° yet again. I'm just going to check and find it back again because I keep losing it. There it is. And everything seems to be all right. So what I am going to do is to continue with my cuts all the way down. I can see my line lined up nicely there. And then I'm going to get my cuts, and then I'm going to show you how to make the block very, very quickly. Okay, so I've cut my strips now. I'm just going to open them up. You can see this beautiful square. So I'm just going to iron it, make sure it's lovely and flat. I'm using a very cool iron here. It's not hot. And there is some steam on it. Now, I think I mentioned it, but I'm going to say it again. You need to ensure that you have perfect 1/4" seam for this particular block. Once we've done all of them, you're going to be needing some background fabric. And the background fabric color I've chosen is white. You need 4 of these individual squares to make up your block. All right, so let's put that to the side. So you're going to use your block now, your smaller blocks, to make your major block. So I'm going to put all of the longer strips. Now we do have some dog ears here, which I'm going to quickly snip off for presentation purposes, just so that everything gels together nicely. Now, it's important to do this because this particular block, you're going to have quite a number of them come together. So it's going to make that area bulky. So I would definitely advise to give it a little bit of a snip at this stage so that it's easier. And it helps with the quilting, just makes it a lot more simplified so you don't get that bulk and don't risk breaking your needle. So I'm going to put all of the long bits together. Karen, honestly. Okay, so I'm going to do like so. Alright, so I'm going to turn this on this side because I don't want this one to be too close to it. Let me move that up a bit so you can see what I'm doing. And probably I should back off. There you go. So I'm just going to come down here so you can see what I'm doing. So right, as I was saying, I'm going to use the longest part here to form the block. So I'm going to put these two together. Initially, I had this like so. Excuse me, I don't want that. Okay, so I'm just going to line it up like so. I could also turn it this way because I don't want these two together. So that is my block there. So what I'm going to do is sew these together front side. Now this, make sure your blocks all are even. Now I can see mine's here are even, and that's because I ensure when I was doing my strips it was an accurate 1/4 inch seam. All right, so I'm going to sew these front sides together. Okay, so before I do that, I'm just going to show you what the block forms. So we are going to, once we've done all that, we're going to be needing some background fabric, and my background fabric here is white. And what I'm going to do is put those there, and put that there, and we're going to draw a line and sew on the line. So this is your Gumball block. It's a beautiful block. Okay, that looks really lovely. So we're going to sew along there, So we're sewing from the both ends, across, cut, trim, come back, and I'll show you the entire block. All right, so we're almost at the last stages now. Okay, so I've sewn all of my 4 squares at the corner. I've even pinned it just to ensure it stays on there without slipping. And I ironed my block once I stitched all 4 of the squares together. Okay, so as you can see, I draw a line there. Hopefully the camera picks it up. I use my heat erasable pen, and all I'm going to do is literally cut 1/4 inch away because I want to remove this side so I can flip it over. All right, so I'm just going to line it up 1/4 inch and sew and cut. Ignore me. Now that's waist. If you want to go ahead and stitch before, then you can, so you have and half square triangles there. So I'm going to continue with that, and I'll come back and show you the completed block. Okay, so that looks really nice, doesn't it, as is? So all we need to do now is fold these back gently. Now you will have a white line there, so you could turn it upside down, take your iron, put a little bit of steam on it there, and do that for all of them, just so that you don't have that white seam line peeping out. Obviously, if you use a darker color, then you don't have that issue, and you can press the seam however it wants to go. Notice I've pressed behind as well to try and get it as flat as possible. So I'm going to push it back with my fingers first, just to ensure. So one of the reasons why it's pushing it towards me is because the seam lines are coming towards me, isn't it? So we're just going to have to give it a little bit of steam and put it back. Let it head towards the center of the block. So you want it angled away, as you would normally. So, okay, so I reckon that's good. And I'm just going to give that a good press before I show you the block completed. And this is your block. That is your gumball block. All right, so we're going to make some more and build the quilt together. And I'm going to show you how to join them. It looks beautiful. Gumball block. I'm going to show you how to do the completed quilt in a few days' time. Okay? All right, bye for now. Happy quilting. Let me know what you think of the block and the colors. Notice how it rotates really nicely and we haven't got the colors together, so it shows up the pattern and the scale of the prints really nicely. Okay guys, all right, let's move on. See you next time. Bye. Happy quilting.